Kay Cole with the psychology department, and she is going to talk to us about test anxiety. So I will let you take it away.
It's one of my favorite topics because it's so debilitating if you have it and so simple to take care of. I'll also say that I don't see it as something where you have to have real anxiety to benefit from the techniques I'm going to talk about. It's been a long time since I've been evaluated on a regular basis. And I think of students where there are several weeks every semester where you have 1, 2, 3, sometimes more finals week tests. And I feel if we don't manage it, if we don't put some effort into test taking approach, then the content doesn't matter. You know, what we've learned will not get put back out on the test. So I'm going to ask you to, this is great, it's early in the semester, give me what I'm talking about 2 weeks. Just give 2 weeks to the things I talk about today and then take your first test, because everything I talk about is based on research, what we find is the most effective form of treatment. I have a private practice over at College Skyline Center, and the number of people, students that I see who never bring up test anxiety shocks me. We talk about other issues or things that are going on for them, but they don't mention something that has such an easy fix. I'm thrilled that Project Stay is so good about addressing academic areas that are not content related, that affect everything. So I'm going to start by talking about stress being good. And test anxiety actually is good. There's something called the Yerkes-Dodson law that says there is an optimal level of arousal in order to perform well. The problem is it's different for every person. Some people, they get a lot of stress, they get a lot of tests in 1 week, and that makes them completely organized. And their house is clean and they're efficient and it's perfect. Other people, they need small spaced amounts of stress, challenges that they can, to the best of their ability, spread out over time. No stress is bad. So when you feel anxiety about a test coming up, the first thing you should do is recognize that this is not a bad thing. If we didn't have anxiety, our houses would be a mess, we would have no motivation, we would not take care of business, we would not get to places on time. Stress in and of itself is a good thing. If you don't have some stress in your life, you're probably not accomplishing something. So when you first feel the pang of anxiety, which is when for you? When you get the syllabus at the beginning of the semester, do you feel a little pang? Or is it like the week before the actual test? The day before. And then the regret kicks in. Like, oh my gosh, it's tomorrow, and I did not use my time wisely. That kind of feeling. Well, the research that I'm going to talk about largely focused on what's called state-dependent memory. And this is the key to everything else I say. The state you're in when you learn material should be the exact same state you're in when you get tested on that material. So if you want to be in the same kind of relaxed but motivated state, you need to do something to put your brain in that place. Every single time you study for a test, every single time you sit in that class and listen to lecture, and then every single time you actually sit down to take the test. Sometimes, in truth, the state can be the context, the room. In an ideal world, you would study for all of your tests in the exact same room where you learned the material and where you're going to be tested. Most of us can't do that. But the truth is, you shouldn't be lying on your bed with your feet up with the TV muted while you study, right? Because that is so dissimilar to where you are when you're sitting in a room with people you are kind of aware of but are silent. I mean, think about the situation that would be most like a test. You're surrounded by people, but everybody's pretty quiet. It used to drive me nuts when I could hear people write. Those furious writers during essay exams. But what's similar to that on campus? Library. It's boring, but it's true. The library is absolutely the best place to study because you can control that context. It is very similar, sitting upright, lit room, surrounded by people who are kind of talking but not really. That's what you can hear it. The other thing is what kind of emotional state you're in every time you take the class, listen to a lecture, and take the test. I did a study, I used to teach at MSSU before I came here, and I did a study with comparing 2 algebra classes. And the whole point was, one algebra class we did progressive muscle relaxation. I'm going to do this with you later, just about 10 minutes. progressive muscle relaxation. Everyone in the class, the first day, explained to them what it was. And then on the first 2 minutes of every class after that, they went through the progressive muscle relaxation on their own. I can't even tell they're doing it. It takes 60 to 70 seconds to do an entire progressive muscle relaxation. Then we asked them to do that same thing before they studied for the exam, before they studied the material or did problems, and also right before they took the exam. So we did that with one class. The other class, we didn't even talk to them about it. The end of the semester, not only had the group that had done that progressive muscle relaxation, not only did they do better on exams, but their problem-solving flexibility, mental efficiency, all of these things we didn't even directly teach had significantly changed over the course of the semester. There's something soothing about it, and the more soothed we are, the better our brain works. So I don't necessarily have test anxiety, but the last time I had to take a big test in order to get licensed as a psychologist, you have to take the EPPP, which is really scary. It's like the bar exam for psychologists. Half the people who take it fail. In some states, this kills me, they set the pass at the median. Half the people who take it, no matter what their score is, are going to pass. The other half are going to fail. So it's scary. So I did this. It's not exciting. It's not really dramatic or interesting, but it absolutely works. And I also studied in the library. Again, it's like health behaviors. It's really the boring stuff, but it really, really works. So I'm going to ask you for the rest of the semester, I said 2 weeks, but I'm going to extend it, to do this every time you sit in a class. It literally would take you less than a minute. Every time you sit in a class, you can even be listening to other people while you do it. With your eyes open, it's not like you're, doing some sort of yoga position. Yeah. Every time you sit down to study, and then every time right before you take the test. Once you get just in the habit of doing it. And I would suggest train yourself to do it for the rest of your life. I do these whenever I'm frustrated. People are telling me things I don't want to hear. I'm reverse breathing. I'm nodding, but I'm reverse breathing because it's just something that I train myself to do that is soothing. So the two that I'm going to ask you to think about and then choose the one that fits you the best are the two that research shows are the ones that activate, or it's called your parasympathetic system. You've heard of fight or flight. Something happens and you're on. You're geared to either fight that stressor or run away from the stressor. So everything in your body, your body releases sugars and fats into your bloodstream so you can run faster. You release adrenaline and cortisol, which is wonderful if you're going to go run or beat somebody up. But most of the time, the things that activate that fight or flight, we just sit there and just eat it. Someone telling us something we don't like, disappointment, failures. Normally we get that physically aroused, and a lot of people don't know how to turn it off. One way to turn it off is to do what's called progressive muscle relaxation. It sends a message to your brain that you're safe, you're not in danger, calm down. You should just a lot of people before they fall asleep as well. So I'm going to turn away from you because it's disconcerting to be stared at while you're trying to relax. And I'm going to ask all of you to close your eyes and do this with me. Or at least close your eyes. Don't be difficult. But what we're going to do is we're going to flex and relax every muscle in your body, starting with your feet. One by one, I'll tell you which ones to do, and then go all the way up to your head. You'll flex and hold while I count to 5. And then as I count backwards from 5, you'll relax. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, if you have any muscle problems, any physical difficulty with your spine or your back, you may not want to do it. Or neck problems, don't do the part where we go to the neck. But other than that, follow along. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Unless you don't know how to do a particular flex, I'll be showing how to do it. Close your eyes, drop your shoulders, relax your jaw. We store a lot of tension in our shoulders and our jaw. I want you to focus on your breathing. I want you to imagine that you just stepped out of a warm bath and your body feels heavy and warm and relaxed. Starting with your feet and only your feet. When I start counting, I want you to flex them into a tight ball. Squeeze your feet. 1, keep them squeezed. 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax your feet completely. Keep them relaxed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I'm going to ask you to flex your calf muscles by digging your heels into the ground and pointing your toes to the ceiling. Flex the back of your lower leg. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax your legs and your entire body. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to ask you to flex your thigh muscles by squeezing your knees together and flexing your upper legs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax your entire body. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Focus on how heavy, warm, and relaxed your lower body is. We're going to flex our lower torsos by squeezing our buttocks so you rise out of the seat and tighten your tummy. Suck it in as hard as you can. 1. Again, tighten your buttocks and suck in your stomach. 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax completely. Sink back into the chair. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to ask you to flex your upper torso by putting the palms of your hands together and squeezing them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax your body. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to flex our arms by bending at the elbows as if we're showing off our biceps. Squeeze while you also hold a tight fist. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax completely. Let your arms rest on your chair or your desk. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I want you to imagine stress just leaving your fingertips and flowing completely out of your body. Now, as long as you don't have any neck or back problems, we're going to flex our face and our neck. I'm going to have you put your shoulders all the way up to your ears and scrunch your face into a tight ball. No one's looking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, make sure your shoulders and your jaw are both relaxed. Focus on the warmth and the heaviness of your body. Now open your eyes. I did it slow. You can do that sitting in your seat. You don't have to do this. The face one's a little bit harder, but a lot of clients of mine do that to fall asleep. My view kind of is, I think we should do things like that for prevention rather than treatment, because if you can't sleep, it's kind of too late. You know, the idea is to prevent the stress from ever building up where it interferes with normal daily functions like sleeping. So I'm anxious by nature. So really, if I was smart, I would do that 3 or 4 times a day, just so that when something small happens, I don't, overreact. But in this case, it's good to do it. You can do it while people are talking to you. You do this. In your seat, waiting for lecture to start every single time. Every time you sit down to study for the test, and every time, of course, you take the test. Now, if that one feels uncomfortable, your muscles don't respond well to it, there's also reverse breathing, which is even more inconspicuous. So that means, some people call it diaphragmatic breathing. So when we're tense and keyed up, fight or flight's activated, which for a lot of people with test anxiety, a test creates fight or flight. And the bad thing about that is you've got that adrenaline and cortisol coursing through your body, and it's corrosive. It just erodes your internal organs. It erodes your ability to fight off infection over time. If you look at people by the end of the semester with test anxiety, they get ill a lot more often. And we believe, white blood cells hide in the bone marrow when we're stressed if we don't do something to prevent it. Another way to prevent it that activates that parasympathetic system that shuts us down is to just change the way you breathe. So if you're in fight or flight, you need to run, then it's great to go breathe in, your stomach goes in. Breathe out, your stomach goes out. That's what we should be doing when we're all keyed up. But when we're not keyed up, that should be reversed. When we breathe in, our stomach, that's what we call it reverse. Breath goes in, stomach goes out. people sometimes practice that. You know, you kind of just have to practice that on your own, because you got to put your hand on your stomach and pay attention. Like you're filling it up, is what I call it, the diaphragm. Get all that air all the way down, fill your stomach, and then when you blow out, the stomach goes back in. I have had people tell me before that they get dizzy. I'm gonna hyperventilate, I can't do it. Well, your body's very familiar with it because you can't sleep without doing it. And if you've ever watched somebody sleep, that sounds creepy, but I've been you'll notice that they are in diaphragmatic breathing. I mean, you have to reverse it to activate that parasympathetic system that puts us to sleep and maintains our sleep. So if you feel like I can't do it, you just have to be patient, put it away for a second, try it again later, because your body is very familiar with it. You would be able to do it. And a lot of, to be honest, I was in labor for 24 hours without any medication. I reverse breathed the entire time. For 24 hours. I mean, it was, a long time, but it felt like, wow, that's bearable. I mean, that is that powerful. If you've practiced it, and that's the key, you have to have practiced it. You can't wait for a test to be like, what was that reverse thing she was talking about? Or what I'm notorious for doing is I'll try something the first time I really need it. Like I'll wait till I'm all stressed out and then I'll try a new technique, which is ridiculous. You have to practice all of those things when you're calm and relaxed so that when you call them into play, they're natural. So I tell people, practice it every time you're at a stoplight for a week. Practice it every commercial when you sit down and watch TV, or somehow train yourself to do it so that when I do it when I got pulled over for a speeding ticket, and I was like, I was that good. To me, it's easier in the sense that you don't have to think as much if it's practice. Some people much prefer the progressive muscle relaxation. Especially, you should be aware of where you hold tension in your body. I emphasize the jaw and the shoulders because that's very common for people to hold tension there. I notice by the end of the day sometimes where I can do this. I had no idea that I was tense in my shoulders. It's weird to me that I was like walking around like that the entire day. You have to pay attention to where you hold it. Some people hold it in their back. A lot of people hold it in their back. A lot of physicians will say that might be part of the reason so many people complain of back problems. Because if your muscles are tense, your body doesn't flow right, especially during movement. So here's the challenge. Engage in one of those two, or if you find one that works better for you, more power to you. The internet's full of them. Do it again. When you sit down, get to class a minute or two early and do that. Just focus on that for the first 1 or 2 minutes. If you get there late, you can do it while you're unpacking your stuff and starting to write things down. I'll ask you, where do you study? I mean, do you study at home, sitting at a desk, or are you on your bed with your feet up?
On the bed.
Do you fall asleep sometimes? No. But the rest of you? You do a desk.
Lazy boy.
Lazy boy? Can you bring it to school for the test?
That would be nice.
Would that be nice? Yeah. But think about where you study and also how many distractions you have when you study. Do you listen to the radio? I mean, really, you should make it, again, anything you're doing when you study or sit in class should be the same as what you're doing when you sit for a test. We also believe that it activates where you store that information. You store information in a certain state. I mean, I'm not suggesting that people drink alcohol, obviously, but when they do studies about what people learn information when they're in that state, slight inebriation, they recall the information better when they're in that state. It works for relaxation. It works, unfortunately, for drugs, of course. Again, don't walk away like I think she's supposed to drink. But seriously, being in whatever state, whatever you can put yourself into, I mean, the research would suggest even if it's agitation. Think of one memory. It doesn't matter. So, I mean, relaxation is better because the calmer we are, the more we can recall. But try and put yourself in whatever works for you, guaranteed way of putting into a state, and then do it consistently. Now, the truth is, of course, when you take the test, you'll be a little bit more aroused than you were sitting at your desk at home in terms of stress. That's fine. I mean, it's not as if, oh my gosh, it's not working. You can't tell yourself it's not working. It is working, but you're supposed to be more aroused. Remember the Yerkes-Dodson, it should motivate you to recall more information and to ignore distractions that are occurring in the room. So that, I'm going to talk about some other things that are important, but that is a huge one that you have control over. studying all of it the night before doesn't work. I did that all through undergrad, I mean, I get that we do that, but the truth is you are much better off with what the research calls spaced practice. You are better off spending 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week, than you are spending 4 hours on a Saturday. But a lot of times we do, we push it off until a Saturday because we're like, I don't have time to study. The truth is, if you have 10 minutes, you have time to study. You don't need an hour, a 2 hour, or 3 hour block. And in fact, the research suggests you're better off not doing cramming. I'm not saying you should maybe spend a little bit more time the night before or the day before, but never at the expense of sleep. Never cram at the expense of sleep, because nothing will help you retrieve information better than having been well rested. People violate that one all the time. The truth is, you should spend 10 minutes every other day, every day. I don't know what your load is. Also what you need. Some people need more study time. It's not fair, but that's, once we get past, I think this is true with a lot of things in life. Once you get past the injustice and the unfairness, you just work with it. But sometimes, and so some people do need half an hour a day, every single day. Some people need more. It doesn't matter so much as long as you know what you need. And that you open that book for 10 minutes is so much better than waiting to have 3 hours on a Saturday. So think about spaced practice and do a certain amount of time every day or every other day. It's the cure for procrastination. You know why people procrastinate? Because the job seems too big. And if the job is a 4-hour study session, it's too big. But 10-minute study session, it's hard not to do. Like I tell people, you've got a lot of things you do in your life that you reward yourself with. Earn that reward. If you have a TV program you really like to watch, don't watch it until you've done your 10 minutes. If you want to go somewhere with a friend, tell yourself, have the self-discipline, which is more important than intellect by far, have the self-discipline to say, okay, I am going to do that. And I'm not going to feel guilty. So I'm not going to rob myself of the relaxation component of that fun by feeling guilty for having done it. Have you ever done that, gone to a movie and been like, I don't have time for this. This is ridiculous. Why am I doing this? Where you rob yourself of the relaxation that comes with going to a movie. It's easier to do that if you have earned it, so to speak, by spending a certain amount of time studying. Okay. 2 things I want to talk about with sleep, because sleep might be even more important than studying, and more important, I hate to say this, than the relaxation component. Because people who don't sleep, actually they don't even drive well. And we are a nation deprived of sleep. The average college student gets 6 hours of sleep a night, and that's not enough. There are a lot of people who don't get enough sleep, and they have insomnia. So they go to bed exhausted. They lie in bed and they're absolutely exhausted, and they can't fall asleep. The frustration of that is overwhelming. But to me, the even greater detriment is you don't perform well. We need long stretches of sleep. We go into REM, this might be a review for a lot of people, we go into that REM sleep every 90 minutes. REM sleep is rapid eye movement, that's when we're dreaming. You all dream. I have people tell me that they don't dream, but if you didn't dream, you'd be struggling to function. They did one study, the video of this is hysterical. They did a study, and I can't remember what university it was, where they let people sleep, but they didn't let them dream. So they had them hooked up to machines, and every time they went into rapid eye movement, they would come in the lab and wake them up. The funny part to me is that they're like, oh, sorry. Then they realize where they are, and they pull it together, but when you first wake them up, they're furious. And they do this for days and days at a time. No dreaming at all. Full 8 hours of sleep, but no dreaming. And at the end of it, they drive worse than people who are drunk. I mean, of course, to a point. There's a point where you passed out drunk, but they could not do basic math problems. They couldn't recall basic, even personal information, as well as people who had not gone through the dream deprivation. We have to dream, but people who have poor sleep don't dream well. They don't dream for long periods of time. If some people who, there's different types of insomnia. There's sleep onset insomnia where you can't fall asleep when you want to, but there's also sleep maintenance where you can't maintain your sleep. And those are people who often wake up every 90 minutes. Because you go from light sleep to deeper sleep, dreaming, back out, light sleep. But when they get back up to the light sleep, they'll wake back up again. A lot of things cause that. Sometimes it's genetic, alcohol's, nightcaps are terrible. They might help you fall asleep, but then go and stay in a lighter level of sleep, and you're more likely to wake up every 90 minutes. whatever you do, make sure you have enough sustained sleep where you can go into 3, 4, even 5 different REM stages. We prosper less stressed, we think more clearly, we do better on exams. So, how do you do that? 2 things. Sleep hygiene, some more of the boring stuff. You just can't some people can't drink caffeine after 3. My husband claims that he has insomnia. And I can hear him pop the Diet Pepsi all night long. And it's not caffeine free. Like, you don't have insomnia. You have poor judgment. I can't work with that if you don't understand that you have poor sleep hygiene. Here's the other thing. You also, you know, we are like toddlers. We need a routine to go to bed. Some people take a bath, they put their pajamas on, they watch a show or read a chapter or read a verse or whatever it is that they do. They have this standard pattern that they go through, and it does shut the brain off. Here's one that people don't like. If you struggle with sleep, I mean, if you're fine with it, it's fine. But also remember that sometimes we struggle with sleep only when we're anxious. So if you've got a big test week coming up, you might have more difficulty. You should start practicing this. Going to bed and waking up at the same time every single day. Even Saturday and Sunday. That's what kills people, not sleeping in. Because if you sleep in, then your circadian rhythms, it's that system of sleep and wake that you're on, becomes messed up. Ideally, if you're sleeping well, you should be able to fall asleep within 15 minutes is the max of lying down, and you should be able to wake up without your alarm. I'm a big believer in backup, so have your set your alarm. But if you're sleeping well and normally, you absolutely should fall asleep within 15 minutes and you should wake up energized and almost automatically. I mean, I violated 2 on Saturday and Sunday. But if I had trouble with sleep, if I went through a period for whatever reason I had insomnia, I would get back on that like nobody's business. I would immediately be back on that. Now, some people can, violate all the rules and sleep fine. And I say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if you struggle at all, or if you're going through a period where you're going to have a lot of stress, test anxiety or otherwise, I would say nothing will do you more good, even diet, exercise, everything, than getting on top of your sleep. Don't let me forget exercise, because there's a lot of research on that in memory. But before I do, let's talk about stimulus control. Anybody here have significant insomnia or struggle to fall asleep?
Not to fall asleep.
To stay asleep?
But I used to have a hard time staying awake.
Oh, were you
I
napping?
would fall asleep, staying up.
Like a horse.
Yeah, except the horses don't normally all head first into their work, and I did. But I started getting up every day at the same time, and I've been doing that for the last 15 years, and I don't have trouble.
Oh, that's interesting. You reset your internal clock and it's just working on its own. That's fantastic.
So when you mentioned that, I was like, yeah, maybe that was something else that happened.
I would argue that's huge, maybe the sole purpose that you started getting regular sleep. Stimulus control, if you are in bed for more than 15 minutes, I mean, not watching TV or on the phone, but I mean, your lights are out, you're planning to go to sleep, and it takes you more than 15 minutes, you're doing something wrong. I would argue that you're not sleeping well. So what I would say is stimulus control. I used to do insomnia protocols at a hospital in Baltimore, and they hated this, and it worked better than anything else on the planet. It works better than, don't do meds for sleep, especially don't do meds for sleep right before a test, because it does affect memory and it does affect brain function. And also it creates what we call rebound insomnia, meaning that when you go off the meds, your insomnia is worse than it was before you even started. Like you've created an even bigger problem. What you should do, first of all, don't ever nap. Naps disrupt the circadian rhythms more than sleeping in. So don't nap, and figure out how much sleep you really need. So I used to see a lot of elderly people at the hospital I worked at who had insomnia, and they would come in and they'd say, I'm awake every morning at 3. It's awful, I can't get back to sleep. I'll say, well, what time do you go to bed? And they'll say 9. You don't have insomnia. The older we get, the less sleep we need. So if you don't want to wake up at 3, you have to go to bed at midnight. I mean, I hate to say that. You're not, I mean, that's, if you only need, we start out needing 18 hours of sleep as infants, and as we get older and older, aside from a brief, period in adolescence where we sleep more, we don't need to sleep that, sometimes 5 or 6 hours by the time we get elderly. I still need 8 to function well. But here's the thing, 15 minutes, you're not as, okay, look, let me back up. How much time do you need? Do you know? If you're 6, 7, 8 hours where you function optimally, where you're not getting drowsy during the day, you're not gonna fall asleep if some professor shows you a boring video. Right? I can't tell you how many people not off my show videos. I feel so badly for them. So, I mean, even if they're not interested, they're exhausted. So if you need 8 hours, make sure you're getting 7 good ones first. Meaning you're not waking up in the middle of the night, you're falling asleep in the So, also you need 7 hours, or you need 8, let's start you with 7, midnight to 7 every single day. Here's the hard part. If you're asleep for more than, or in bed for more than 15 minutes and you haven't fallen asleep, you have to get out. Why? Because you have associated your bed with being awake and not with being asleep. You know, called classical conditioning. If you lie in bed and worry about, or not even worry, just think about what you have to do tomorrow, or who you need to call, or what's on your plate, or all of these things, all of that's what we call arousing. What I used to do, and this is so terrible, I used to look at my clock and I'd think, oh my gosh, even if I fell asleep this second, I'd only get 6 hours. You know, as soon as I think that, I'd yawn up again. Which is, you know, finally I just turned it around. You know, I tell people, don't even look at your clock. But also, you can't do anything in bed. If you struggle with insomnia, if you're not asleep in 15 minutes, my advice is, and the research backs me up, you can't do anything in bed besides sleep. We tell clients sleeping and sex, that's it. No watching TV, no talking on the phone, no eating, no reading, no doing homework, nothing. Because you've associated your bed with either worrying or talking or just being alert and active. So to break that, nothing in bed, if you're not asleep in 15 minutes, get out, go do something else, it doesn't matter. You watch TV. I mean, some people's, ideally, you don't expose yourself to light, but I'm not going to ask someone to stumble around in the darkness of their house. Whatever you do, don't go back to bed unless you're drowsy. And then again, 15 minutes, you're not asleep, you gotta do it again. And here's the rub. I don't care how many times you do it, well, I care, but no matter how many times you do it, you still have to wake up at 7. You can't say to yourself, well, I didn't go to bed till 4, so obviously I can sleep in. You can't. The first 2 weeks are really tough, and after that, it is like smooth sailing. It's kind of like changing your entire pattern of sleep. And then after that, if you do it right, almost without exception, you fall asleep within 15 minutes, and you wake up, often without even needing the alarm at the same time every day. And if you wake up on your own, don't go back to sleep. Have you ever done that? Woke up and been like, woohoo, it's Saturday, and got back to sleep, and then the rest of the day, you're dry. It's like lethargic almost. Like you get too much sleep isn't good either.